You know, I launched Students for Life 16 years ago as a post-Roe organization for our pro-life movement, knowing that the end of Roe, we would need a trained army that would spread out in all 50 states, leading the charge. And I remember not too long after launching Students for Life, we were in New York City at the Harvard Club for a swanky event, one that I'll never be invited back to ever again because we brought our defund Planned Parenthood bus. But a trusted mentor took me aside after the event and said, you know, I love your passion, but you need to tone it down when you're talking about abolishing abortion or when Roe versus Wade is reversed, because no one's really ever going to take someone seriously who actually believes this. More than a decade later, I am so grateful to say I stubbornly refused to listen to my mentor's advice. For on Friday, June 24th, I was honored to read the words released seconds before by the Supreme Court in front of TV cameras and the pro-life generation gathered at the court to say the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled. While this was a triumph for sure, I don't see this moment in my life, though, as my victory. For it's right now, the exact moment I believe I was made for. St. Joan of Arc said, I was born for this. I believe we were born for this moment. And the proof is everywhere I look. Today, there's more than 1,300 Students for Life groups, 50 states all across the country, 150,000 trained young people. On any day, including here at Liberty, there are hundreds of student leaders doing what we do best, having conversations with those most targeted by the abortion industry, changing minds and activating young people to join us. And we're committed. No matter rain, snow, or sunshine, we are there in the streets and in our communities. But this extraordinary work to build and launch and sustain a pro-life generation that is now giving nightmares to the confused writers of the New York Times about why so many of us young people are pro-life, it didn't come easy, as radical sacrifices had to be made along the way by the original pro-life gen, my hero, Phyllis Schlafly, Dr. Jack Wilkie, who refused silence in 1973 when 7 men handed down Roe and said the issue is now decided. By the investors and faithful donors who've pledged support, even when polls were against us in the pro-life movement. For so many of you, the hundreds of thousands who've shown up in Washington, D.C. every single year to march. And let's not forget about us, those of us who go out in the streets and pray in front of an abortion facility or sidewalk council, or those of us who are on campus and the names and the insults that get hurled at us, or the threats of violence, the threats of rape that our families and my own daughter has received, some of which have prompted the need now for full-time security for those of us who are advocating for life. 2 years ago, anticipating that Roe versus Wade was soon going to fall, recognizing that there were way too many close calls in my family, that no day is guaranteed with my 4 children, especially two of my children who have cystic fibrosis. My husband and I decided to make a radical choice for our family. Much to the displeasure of my parents, friends who said that I should in no way do this, we sold our home for the 6 of us to move into a 425 square foot camper. It was pretty radical. For us, we knew we wanted to chart a different path. And in America, there's an open road before us. Something to explore, to show my children God's glory and his greatness in our creation, to learn and go and appreciate history that so many in our nation have seemed to forgotten. Truly, we don't have a roadmap. If you ask me where I live, I'll respond, well, I can tell you where I'm at right now. Where we go is decided upon where I'm needed in the pro-life movement, or what hands-on history lesson we want to teach our children. I think this open road is where our pro-life movement is right now. To God's glory, we find ourselves in a brand new era where there literally is no roadmap for the journey we are on. We're drawing out the map, choosing the roads we will take to create this post-Roe America. And while this roadmap will certainly be shaped by the November elections, I think we can all agree that cultural transformation and the road before us is going to be a long one. And I'm talking Maine to Alaska with 4 kids and 3 puppies in a truck long. That is very, very long, friends. On our campuses and online, we have to reach this generation, those who have never known an America without legal abortion, and we have to help quell their fear, rebutting the misinformation that is spreading like wildfire online. This year, Students for Life will have 1 million conversations with Gen Z, but that's not going to be enough. We're going to need your help. In our communities, we have to do a better job of showing her what we do and who we are as a pro-life movement. That for 50 years we've been building, supporting, and sustaining an entire social safety net. Do you know in the last year and a half, Students for Life has knocked on 120,000 doors in 20 neighborhoods surrounding abortion facilities across our country. And the stats are alarming. 75% of the neighbors we speak with do not know what a pregnancy resource center is or that they even exist in their community. In our state houses and on Capitol Hill, we've got to finally defund Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion vendor. That's right. Planned Parenthood can go fund themselves. They can do it themselves. We have to hold our leaders accountable, demanding that they do more than simply pass a nationwide ban on abortions in the second trimester at 15 weeks. They have to do more than that. And we have to tackle the very real threat of the chemical abortion pill cartel. In a recent article in the Washington Post, entitled "Covert Network Provides Pills for Thousands of Abortions in the U.S. and Post-Roe," journalist Caroline Ketchner exposed the illegal abortion cartel that has formed in Mexico and that is now shipping drugs to women in red and blue states across America with no doctors involved and no physical examinations. I want to read for you the last part of her article. "Turn on the bath," Monica yelled out to him. "I have to get in there." She felt a flood of liquid in her underwear and stepped into the bath with her clothes still on. Lying back in the tub, she said she feels some pressure release. Then she screamed. The fetus was floating in the water, slightly smaller than the palm of her hand. He had a head, hand, legs, she said, defined finger and toes. This is in the Washington Post. Seeing a dead baby floating in a bathtub and then being told to use acid to dissolve your baby's body before flushing it down the toilet is the definition of women's empowerment to the abortion movement, to Planned Parenthood, to the feminist movement, and more broadly, the entire left of the United States of America. But it's so clearly the opposite. It's so clearly the opposite of empowerment. While mainstream America is disgusted by this newspaper article, while mainstream America has been disgusted by the recent NPR airing of an abortion, the audio of an abortion going on, while the abortionist coaxes the patient when she tells her she can't go on, to tell her you can keep doing this. While America is disgusted, our ruling class is bending over backwards to portray these experiences in a positive light and to gaslight all of us who were born after 1973, after Roe, all of us who personally know the devastation that abortion has caused in our own lives and our loved ones. They're trying to gaslight into telling us that this is a good. But we know women deserve better. Men deserve better, and children, most importantly, deserve better than to be starved, suctioned, poisoned, dismembered to death, than to have their little body dissolved by acid before being flushed down the toilet. Friends, I understand your roadmap to help us in the pro-life movement achieve our ultimate destination of abortion being unthinkable and unavailable in our lifetime, that's going to depend on your life experiences, your skill sets, the state and community you live in. But you have several roads before you where you can choose to join us in this quest. But we need you to do more. I need you to do more. I need you to make some radical choices. So be unafraid to speak the truth about the violence of abortion and the extremism of those who advocate it for so boldly. Today, tomorrow, the next day, no matter your profession, your vocation, you cannot give in to fear or allow yourself to be silenced by an abortion Goliath bullying or the threats of a weaponized DOJ. You have to be innovative. You have to refuse to rest. Even if you live in a red state, even when your state becomes quote unquote abortion free, because deadly chemical abortion pills are still going to be flowing into your state, arriving at your doorsteps or your granddaughter's doorstep. And you have to be willing to hope, to envision an America without abortion, where it's unavailable, where it's unthinkable, and to choose in the peaks and the valleys of this fight, to choose to hold that vision close. Because we know such a long journey will not come without setbacks or moments of questioning. You have to choose to be undeterred in this goal. You know, my family's 2-year history of living on the road, there have been many unexpected things that can't come up. One of my sons, who doesn't have cystic fibrosis, was diagnosed with a very rare neurological disease. We've had expenses and tire blowouts. My husband and I yelling at each other at 9 o'clock at night at a campground, trying to figure out how to back up a camper into his parking spot. He is always right. I am usually always wrong. But our commitment to our family's adventure to do this together always continues on to the next state, to the next national park, national historic landmark, despite literally the bumps we face in the road. In the pro-life movement, we can't allow ourselves to get stalled alongside of the road. The open road is ours, and it's not one they can win upon, because the question is not if we will protect children's lives, it's when. But like my family's journey and my husband's driving, which is always slow and steady in the right lane, we in the pro-life movement know we're not going to get there by driving 90 miles an hour in the left lane with the top down. We have to understand that this is not, this is going to come with setbacks, with repairs, with yes men stopping and asking for directions sometimes. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned this past year while traveling the country, one that we learned firsthand as a family, was the failure of Reconstruction in our nation. This winter, my family traveled from Florida to Texas, throughout the American South, and in every little town we visited, it caused us to have conversations with our children about the devastating results of slavery and civil war and the scars that still remain with so many. And as I was conducting interviews this summer about the fall of Roe versus Wade, about what's our next step in the pro-life movement, I couldn't help but think back to that journey this spring and think back about what happened after our nation's civil war. The Reconstruction effort, it's a topic barely discussed in our history classes, but we don't talk about its failure in the 99 years from the end of the Civil War, not too far from here in Appomattox, to the signing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. The 99 years. I'm honored we've been able to take my kids to Appomattox, to the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson, Mississippi. It's tragic to have to explain to your 7-year-old why that robe is so scary to so many and how it still fears so many. But But I'm also honored to say we've been able to take our children to places where a few people decided to act radically. My daughter and I got to sit in the bus seat in Detroit at the Henry Ford Museum where Rosa Parks refused to vacate. We stood behind the lunch counter in Greensboro. This spring, we're going to be traveling to Birmingham, where Martin Luther King Jr. wrote words from a jail cell that inspired so many more to join him in this radical fight. He wrote, "I have almost reached the most regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride towards freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice." He went further on to say, "There was a time when the church was very powerful. It was during that period that the early Christians rejoiced when they were deemed worthy to suffer for what they believed. In those days, the church was not merely a thermometer that recorded the ideas and principles of popular opinion. It was a thermostat that transformed the mores of society. But things are different now. The contemporary church is so often a weak, ineffectual voice with an uncertain sound. Far from being disturbed by the presence of the church, the power structure of the average community is consumed by the church's awful vocal sanction of things as they are. If the church of today does not recapture the sacrificial spirit of the early church, it will lose its authentic ring, forget the loyalty of millions, and be dismissed as a relevant social club with no meaning. I meet young people every day whose disappointment with the church has risen to outright disgust." Friends, tonight we get to decide the roads we will choose and who we as a church will be in this long journey to abolish abortion in our land. Will we be simply a thermometer, or will we be that thermostat? Or in road trip terms, will we be the ones driving and navigating throughout the journey, or the ones sitting at home and liking the pictures on Instagram along the way? Tragically, it took nearly 100 years from the end of the Civil War until the passage of the Civil Rights Act to achieve what Martin Luther King deemed a positive peace. It took the murder of a little boy named Emmett in rural Mississippi, his murderer's acquittal, that led to one woman who refused to give up her seat, which led to marches in the streets, bus freedom rides, student-led lunch counter sit-ins, which resulted in days and weeks of jail time, accepting the stinging pain of water hoses, death threats, bombings, and assassinations. 99 years. The moment we have labored for so long is now upon us. And the road before us may be a long one, but we can't let it take 99 years to put back together what the Supreme Court broke. Will you be unafraid? Will you be innovative? Will you be willing to hope, to seek a radical path? Or will you just do more of the same? I dare you, be radical. Choose roads that will lead us to a positive peace. Working in our communities, in our churches, on campuses, online, in our state houses, and on Capitol Hill. Rise and fight the new challenges like the abortion lobby, their pill cartel, the lack of information about all the resources we provide in the pro-life movement. Rise and fight the fear-mongering that you're seeing every day on social media and in the news. Choose the radical path that will lead us to our destination of a nation where abortion is no longer thinkable, where abortion is no longer available. You have to be the drivers leading the way. Thank you.